Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm your host, Philip Catalfamo. Want to welcome you in wherever you may be listening or watching on Verde Valley TV or KVNA 104.7 FM. I want to welcome you back. We've got an exciting show for you today. We've got some great guests lined up. We're going to get an opportunity to sit down with Klint McKean, the head coach for the boys wrestling program over at Mingus Union High School. Get an opportunity to talk with him about coaching his sons and also what the wrestling season will look like. We'll also get a chance to talk some badminton. That's right. The Prescott Badgers badminton team is doing quite well this season, and we'll get a chance to sit down with their head coach, Bobbi Yoder. And finally, we'll wrap things up with an absolute legend in the 4A Grand Canyon region, a man who took his talents from Cottonwood all the way to Prescott Valley. That is Coach Bob Young, the current head football coach for the varsity football team over at Bradshaw Mountain High School. But before we get into that, I do want to remind our Mingus viewers that we are still continuing our all-decade team. Go to myradioplace.com/Mingus to vote now on the all-decade team presented by Graham's Integrity Auto Sales and Reese's Tire and Automotive. Want to thank them for sponsoring that. We're voting on quarterback and offensive line this week. We've got the announcements done for running back. Now we are moving on to our next positions, which are quarterback and offensive line. So go vote on that right now. Again, myradioplace.com/Mingus, presented by Graham's Integrity Auto Sale and Reese's Tire and Automotive Pros for our Mingus All-Decade team, for you Mingus fans out there. We do have some volleyball rankings to talk about before we get into the show. We have got the 4A conference rankings. This is every 4A team throughout the entire Arizona state, or state of Arizona, I should say. And we do have some Grand Canyon region teams making it to the top 10. First and foremost, Flagstaff sitting atop the 4A conference rankings out of the Grand Canyon region at number 4. They're having a great season so far. Coach Hagelin is doing a phenomenal job over at Flagstaff High School. They're currently looking to finish and continue playing well at first place and finish the season at first. They are always usually a powerhouse team. Behind them is Bradshaw Mountain, the Bears, another solid program. Usually the 1 and 2 can go back and forth between the Bears and the Eagles. They sit at 14 in the 4A conference rankings, again, out of the 4A Grand Canyon region. Finally, we have Prescott at number 19. Again, another solid program, sitting at number 3 in the standings for volleyball in the Grand Canyon region. Then Coconino, surprisingly finding themselves at 22, not having played a game in, I believe, about 2 weeks due to a small COVID outbreak from somebody associated with the team. Again, no players, no coaches involved. It was somebody associated with the team, but they'll be looking to get back and playing very, very soon. And finally, Mojave, Lee Williams, and Mingus Union round out the rest of the 4A conference rankings for volleyball. But like I mentioned, we've got a great show for you. We'll get an opportunity to sit down with Klint McKean on the other side of this break. Should be a lot of fun. He's always great to talk with. And again, I want to remind you, myradioplace.com/Mingus. If you're a Marauder fan, go out there and vote for the all-decade team presented by Graham's Integrity Auto Sales and Reese's Tire Pros and Automotive. With that, we're going to send you into the interview with Coach McKean on the other side of this break. Don't go anywhere. Off the Bench, we'll be right back right here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. We'll see you on the other side.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Off the Bench. I'm your host, Philip Catalfamo. I am joined now by the Mingus Marauder boys varsity head wrestling coach, Klint McKean. Coach McKean, welcome onto the program.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, we're happy to have you. You're not very unfamiliar with the Yavapai Broadcasting broadcasts. You've been on our Mingus broadcast several times, and we're happy to finally bring you on Off the Bench. But last year, pretty successful year for the Marauders. How did it go?
Well, yeah, it was a successful year. And like any year, it had its ups and downs. We came in with high expectations, and then, circumstances happen, injuries happen, and you lose some wrestlers. And we hit a low midway through the season, and then we started rising again, and we ended on a high note. We ended up, boys finished 5th in state. We had 4 state placers,
wow.
1 state champion in Conrad Brady, and the girls, we had 2 state placers, and I believe we finished 9th on the girls for the team.
Well, you just mentioned it, 8 qualifiers last year, 4 placers, 1 state champion. What would you attribute to the success of your program? Because this is not the first time that we featured Marauders in a state championship or even in the state qualifiers.
Yeah, it's time. It's a good coaching staff. It's having an organized program where kids know what to expect, and they have expectations for themselves and their teammates, and it's just a lot of effort on both coaching and wrestlers, and you just got to get them to want to commit when there's so many other things that take them away from what they want, from their goals, and if you can do that, and you can avoid some other pitfalls like grades and injuries and and some bad behaviors, then they're going to be successful.
And we've seen that success. As we mentioned, 8 qualifiers last year, 4 placers. You get 2 returners last year on both sides, the boys and the girls. One of the qualifiers last year was your son. That's got to be kind of exciting. Obviously, you've known him your whole life. How is it now seeing from your son starting out as a small wrestler, making his debut at the varsity level here at Mingus Union, and now he's finding success as well, success that you found as well when you were a Marauder wrestler. So what's it been like being able to coach your son at the highest level?
It's rewarding. It's stressful. You're sending your kid out there to go get in a fight, and you're worried every time.
Mm-hmm.
Proud of him whether he wins or loses, but of course you always want him to win. And, there's times where as a dad and a coach, you have to take a step back and, let him do his own thing. And then there's other times where you need to, be there and be in his ear and give him, encouragement and motivation as much as you can, like any other wrestler. But it's to a different degree when it's your own kid. And I also have another son, freshman this year, Elias, who will be joining us.
Okay, so we'll have 2 McKeans wrestling at the varsity level with Dad. How do you strike that? You mentioned it being on one side your dad, but on the other side you're the coach. I mean, how do you find that balance right in between? Because I would assume while you're out on the mat, you're Coach McKean. You have to be Coach McKean, but once you get into that car ride home and you're having those discussions, you shift over to Dad. So how have you been able to find that middle point in not being encouraging, but also still being, wanting to see your kid develop properly?
Yeah, sometimes you find that middle ground, and sometimes you don't. And I think starting off coaching them at a young age, I made more mistakes when they were younger than I do now. Not to say that I don't make mistakes now with them and how I handle them, but I've learned how to do things, and sometimes your emotion gets the best of you, and even though what you might want to say, if you're being rational and when you're fired up, sometimes it's best just not to say anything. And that goes for really any wrestler. When they lose, they know they screwed up.
Right.
You just pat them on the butt, and then they go off on their own and calm down, and then you can talk about it later.
Now, of course, Coach, you have the luxury of being a part of the wrestling program at Mingus Union as a player and now as a coach. So from your time as a player to now, how much have you seen that program grow?
Well, I've seen it kind of ebb and flow. It was flourishing when I was a wrestler here. And especially we're really after, I graduated in 2001. We finished third as a team. So we were one of the top teams, but we weren't a dominant team. And then, in the 2005 to 2010 era with Tom Wolcash, who had been here since '89, they were just the best team there was in the state. 5-time state champions. And you can see a lot of the guys behind me on the wall are from that era. So, at that time, it was just rolling. Yeah. And then when Coach Wolcash left, we kept it going for a couple of years, and then I stepped down to go coach my boys, and then the program kind of took a dip. And now we've been working steadily and trying to get it back to those heydays. You can never recreate anything. You have to do it your own way, and that's something I found as a coach as well. When I first came on as a head coach, I was just trying to do what my previous head coach did, and it didn't quite work for me. So it's been a journey finding my own style and finding what I'm good at and where I need help, and I get that help from assistant coaches and parents and that sort of thing.
And you've had not only watching the boys program grow, like you mentioned, having that help. Danny Schultz, former wrestler at Mingus, on the girls' side, she steps in as the girls' varsity head coach. Not sure if it's official yet. They haven't changed it on AIA Online yet. We got to get Coach Schultz's email on there so that she's officially the head coach. But anyway, like I mentioned, very similar to you. Was a wrestler in the program, steps in as a head coach. How has she helped to grow the girls wrestling over at Mingus Union, which is still growing currently?
Yeah, she was able to last year get into the girls' PE classes and talk to those girls and recruit and tell them her story and how wrestling is not just a boys' sport. And she paved the way for that here at Mingus, and we're hoping to grow every year with the girls program as far as numbers go. And I can't leave out Coach Dave Wilbur because he's right there along with the girls as well. He's a former 2-time state champ here at Mingus, and he's been assisting with the boys program since about 2013, 2014. And so he really stepped up and is helping out with teaching the girls every day as well. So we appreciate that.
And of course, Zoe Arwin, one of the former wrestlers, she's state champion. Now she's over at Dixie State. You can just kind of feel that program. Even when we were broadcasting the games last year, the program was starting to grow, but they are a very talented squad on the girls' side, along with the boys. The whole program over at Mingus Union is still growing a little bit, of course. There's always going to be that learning curve, but it's got to be encouraging to see more kids going out and trying wrestling. And even on the girls' side as well, only a handful of wrestlers last year, but hopefully as the years progress, there will be more and more girls coming out for the girls' wrestling team because Coach Schultz does a phenomenal job.
Yeah, and with more success, you have more interest.
Right.
And it's kind of twofold with us and trying to grow the program. We're trying, one, to retain our athletes, making sure that they are eligible, that they're doing the right thing in the classroom, but also, there's a high turnover in a sport like wrestling because it's so humbling. You're going out there one-on-one, and when you lose, it's on you, and it feels like you got beat up because you did. And so we lose a lot of kids, just because they quit. And so from a coaching standpoint, that's one of my main goals is to keep a kid for 4 years. And it's in a way impossible, but it's when you see the growth of an athlete, there's nothing more rewarding watching him graduate or her graduate as a senior. And then also with recruiting and growing our program, we want to just have the top tier athletes at Mingus go out for wrestling.
Right.
So that's kind of what we're working on right now.
Again, we were speaking with Mingus Union High School's boys varsity wrestling coach, Klint McKean. Coach, as we all know, and I've been mentioning it probably since the show started, COVID-19 is still continuing out through the entire state, throughout the entire world. We have seen some sports continue on with their season, football, soccer in some areas. Of course, volleyball is continuing on. We are still approaching and waiting for the winter season to continue. That's when wrestling usually kicks off. But how's the off season look, Coach? Wrestling a little more difficult to socially distance. You can't necessarily wrestle while you're standing 6 feet away. But how are we looking right now for the wrestling season this year?
Well, things are moving forward, and it's encouraging seeing football play out. Wrestling is considered, probably the most high risk high school sport right now because of the contact, and
right.
So. We have been practicing in the off season. We haven't been able to practice at the high school. We're not really doing anything Mingus Union High School affiliated. We've been doing some club wrestling, and USA Wrestling has a lot of really good protocols that we've been, and guidelines that we've been following with temperature checks and everything else that sports are required to do. We have a preliminary schedule out right now. The season's going to start a week later. November 9th, I believe, is our first practice. And we have 8 meets instead of the usual 12. So it's going to be less. We should have 2 home meets and 1 home tournament. So it's different. The guidelines when we wrestle are going to be different. You're going to be wearing masks, and you're going to have less, not when you wrestle, but when you're at the tournament. You'll take
right.
your mask off before you wrestle. There'll be, handshaking is part of the sport. There won't really be handshaking with the opposing coaches for wrestlers like you usually do. And, as long as we get to wrestle and as
right.
long as we get to have a sectional and state tournament, that's all we really care about. And we're going to do whatever we have to do to make that happen.
Now, Coach, as you mentioned, social distancing and not really having an off season. It sounds like you guys are still trying to find a way to wrestle and stay sharp. But let's even flash back a little bit before, a few months ago, when there was no fall sports season and no winter season. What was your plan of attack to make sure that your guys and girls are healthy, they're conditioned, and they're ready to go? Was there any sort of point of emphasis, some stuff they could work on at home that you were kind of pushing this off season? Yeah,
strength and conditioning. Running, but when it comes down to it, nothing like just wrestling. I mean, there's no better workout. So they got together on their own and found some mats and threw them in garages and that sort of thing. And that's you do what you have to do.
And very much so, in the words of Jeff Goldblum from Jurassic Park, life finds a way, and it sounds like wrestling finds a way as well. And I'll tell you what, we're excited for the Marauders this season. I know here we broadcast the games last year. We're excited to get out there again and watch some wrestling and get going. And we wish a good season, for everybody and anybody we ever really talked to on this show. Success and health, big thing. And it sounds like the Marauders are ready to go whenever that does happen. Like you mentioned, November 9th will be the first practice. No tentative schedule right now, where we're kind of just still waiting up in the air and patiently waiting for things to play out. But for right now, Coach, it sounds like hopefully we'll be getting to wrestling soon. And I'll tell you what, that first practice on November 9th has got to feel good. Yeah,
it's going to feel great. We maybe we'll get in before then. We'll see if we're cleared to do a couple weeks of preseason. That would be nice. But we have a lot of hope for the season, and I think we have a team that is ready to compete. They're hungry. We've got some great leadership. We have a bunch of captains, a lot of returners, and a group of kids that are really they've got their heads on right. They care about each other. They care about doing things the right way. And it's good to see when a team gels like that, and when it becomes something that you have set up as a coach, but then you take a step back and they start doing things on their own.
Well, Coach, I want to thank you for taking the time. Again, Mingus Union High School's varsity wrestling boys coach, Klint McKean. Coach, the 4A Grand Canyon region's pretty tough, but we're excited to see what happens and plays out for the rest of this wrestling season, and hopefully we'll get started soon.
Great. Thanks. Yeah, we hope to have our guys on Birdie Valley TV again this season, just like last year.
Well, thanks again, Coach, for coming on, and best of luck with the rest of the season. And we look forward to talking to you again on the show. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
I want to welcome you back here to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by the Prescott High School head varsity badminton coach and head varsity girls basketball coach, Coach Bobbi Yoder. Coach, thank you for coming on to talk about your program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I know that you're traveling currently. Your background is actually more on the basketball side as a player and as a coach. What piqued your interest in coaching badminton at Prescott High School?
Yeah, that's definitely a unique story. So 6 years ago, Missy Townsend, the athletic director at Prescott High School, reached out and asked me if I would coach the badminton program, because Carolyn Peters, the current coach, her and her husband got a great job offer up in Idaho, and so they moved on. And so they kept asking me, and I'm like, I don't really know anything about badminton other than what I've, played as a kid in the backyard. I wouldn't mind helping out somebody, if you find somebody to do it. And as soon as I told them that, they stopped looking, and they interviewed like 3 or 4 of us. And, the next day I get the call that I've gotten the job. And so it was definitely kind of a crash course in badminton, a month and a half before the season was supposed to start 6 years ago. And I can't imagine not coaching it now. It's a sport I've grown to love, and great group of kids. So
yeah, I've ran into it at a couple instances on my broadcast career of sports I'm not super familiar with, volleyball being one of them, soccer another. When I was at Grand Canyon University, I had to kind of give myself a crash course in just calling those sports. I can't imagine having to run a program and put together strategy for badminton. I personally, again, much like yourself, have never played badminton outside of in the backyard at my grandmother's house, where we happen to have a badminton set and a little birdie. But other than that, no, I can't even imagine stepping into a program and having to learn a sport and then coach that sport. So it speaks to the success of you as a coach, and also to the success of your program, because, Prescott has been a solid team for a few years in the Division II Northwest. They do not play in the 4A Grand Canyon region. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but the team is off to a hot start again this year. How have you been able to keep your team focused during such a historic season?
Year after year, it always comes back to the group of kids that I have. All of them are just natural athletes, that most of them haven't really played badminton before, other than maybe in PE. And so it makes it a little easier when you have natural athletes. They just pick things up that much faster. Just working, and learning over the last 6 years, every year has been a little bit more. So.
And since you took over the program 6 years ago, the Badgers badminton team has not finished below 3rd place, which, again, just talking about you not knowing the sport coming in and to where you're at now. What would you attribute to your program's success?
Again, a lot of it is just the great group of kids that I have to work with. They pick it up super fast, and they want to be successful as a team, and I think they just truly enjoy the sport, which definitely helps. You gotta kind of love what you do out there to want to get better and put the time and effort in to improve your individual skills and us as a team. So the bulk of it for me is all due to these kids. So.
As I mentioned, Coach, you talked about some of the players coming back from your team. You do return a few, maybe even a majority of your team from the season before with a few new faces. Do you feel that experience gives you a little bit of an edge over some of the teams in your division? Oh yeah, absolutely. So
I have 8 kids on varsity, and 7 of those are returning. Not necessarily varsity returners, but 4 of them, actually 3 of them are varsity returners, and the rest were on JV. Megan Townsend and Elle Long were my 1 and 2 JV last year. And then I've got 1 freshman up on varsity this year. So.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that freshman. Usually I understand, if I again, correct me if I'm wrong, there is no JV or freshman program at Prescott regarding the badminton program. So you do find a couple of the younger players who come up to play at the varsity level. What was the decision in keeping the freshmen on the squad?
We do actually have a JV team. We got a JV and varsity team. I coach both of them. So basically at the beginning of the season, how we kind of do tryouts in the beginning, I usually take at least 2 days, and we have open gyms leading up to tryouts. So assuming everybody is at those, we try to take those first couple days to make sure that all the newbies know the rules and how to serve and basically can function in a singles match. Because eventually, once we actually start doing tryouts, everybody has to go through and play everybody, and then that's how you're ranked. So, you'd be remiss to just throw them out there without showing them how to do it first, because then they would just everybody'd be at the bottom.
They would be like me playing the sport right now. I'm horrible at tennis, and I'm pretty sure it translates to just as bad at badminton.
Yeah. So anyway, once we kind of get through the tryouts, they're all ranked. So the top 6 kids obviously are going to be like the top varsity kids. And then I had a freshman that was kind of in that 7 spot, and then a senior that was in the 8 spot. So that was kind of and she's, Riley Crockett, the 1 freshman that's on varsity, she's probably one of the best freshmen I've had in the 6 years that I've been there. And that's really saying something, because last year's Elle Long and Megan Townsend are phenomenal badminton players. And again, I expect big things out of those 2 by the time they're seniors, and the same for Riley. So that's kind of the thinking on, having her up. And she's already come through huge against some of our tougher opponents, Horizon and Barry Goldwater. She came through with some very big wins that helped us pull out the team win. So.
And of course, we are speaking with Prescott High School head varsity badminton and head varsity girls basketball coach Bobbi Yoder. Coach, you guys play in the Division II Northwest. This is not the 4A Grand Canyon region. In fact, Prescott is the only team representing the northern part of the state. Do you feel any pressure to, kind of representing the county and representing northern Arizona sports? Do you feel any pressure going up against some of those Phoenix schools?
Not really. I guess I don't really look at it that way. I wish there were some more northern teams, just in that some of the trips would be a little shorter, but that's just our norm, for every sport really, that, we're going to have to travel, hour and a half, 2 hours minimum, to get to everybody. But no, I don't really feel the pressure, because, again, every year I've been blessed with a great group of girls that are competitive, that have fun with it, that want to be better and put the time and effort in to make sure that we are, make sure that we have the success that we, have every year. So.
Now, Coach, as we all know, COVID-19 is currently still making its way throughout the state, throughout the world. Everybody's still being very much affected by it. But in a very strange instance, there happens to be one positive regarding COVID-19, and it has to do with the off season, with Prescott being allowed to practice just a little bit earlier than everybody else. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so normally, in the history of badminton at Prescott High School, all the Phoenix teams pretty much have the advantage because they have access to the Arizona Badminton Center, which is located in South Phoenix. And that it's basically, a couple trainers there that are almost Olympic level trainers for badminton. And they have a beautiful facility down there. And those kids, the top programs, the top badminton players in the state for Division I and Division II go there, some of them year round. And, at Prescott, we pretty much play 3 months out of the year. And then typically we start the beginning of June, 2 days a week, open gym, and then all the way through the start of the school year. And that first week before tryouts, I go every day. So that's our badminton season, so to have the group of kids that we have every year and to have the success that we have every year, considering that we, it's only, a third of the year or less that we're actually playing compared to some of these other top programs, and to still be competitive, that just speaks volumes to these kids,
Yeah, and it must be kind of nice getting an opportunity to get just some extra practice time before everybody else does. Like I mentioned, the one positive out of COVID-19, a very good positive for a very strong program that probably could have gotten away with not having an off season at all because of how strong the program is at Prescott High School. Speaking of which, as you mentioned, you took over the program 6 years ago. How have you seen the program grow in those last 6 years to the powerhouse it is now?
There's two things, as far as the growth. One of the biggest things is, the first year I took over 6 years ago, we had like 12 or 13 kids that made up the varsity and the JV program. And every year it's just grown and grown and grown to the point where I had probably, I think 23 players was about the most I've had. And that's just by word of mouth. That's by these kids, talking about it with their friends, having fun. That you don't draw in extra players if these kids aren't having fun out there,
right?
Doing what they're doing. And so it's to the point where I don't even have to try to go out and get kids or try to recruit kids to play badminton. They're just coming in every year, excited about it, excited to learn it. So that definitely makes my job a little bit easier, having kids that want to be a part of it. So.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question, which is, how you're able to keep your numbers up. As you mentioned, you've been able to see that retention, and you're getting the same amount of play. Well, you're not even the same amount of players, but you're getting enough to field a varsity program, a JV program, a freshman program. So that is good that you got that word of mouth going around the campus that, hey, go play some badminton. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely helps. And then, the kind of the second part to the question a second ago, it's the growth that you see from these kids from the first time they step on that court, where they can't even hit a bird, to the end of the season or to the end of their 4 years. Almost all of them, it's can't even hit the bird the first time they're out there, and they just look at it like, oh my God, how am I gonna do this? And I'm like, do not be discouraged. I'm like, it just takes practice, and we just build it from there. And they got the right mindset, and they're going to do well.
Yeah, and they are doing very well. Like I said, the team is off to an extremely hot start, looking to continue that for the rest of the season. Coach, again, we were speaking with Prescott High School head varsity badminton and head varsity girls basketball coach, Coach Bobbi Yoder. Coach, technically, you are not a Prescott Badger. You are now, but you used to be a Bradshaw Mountain Bear, which is the rival team.
Right now.
I'm sorry?
You're throwing me under the bus right now.
I am a little bit, just a little bit. But a lot of people would say now, depending on what side you lean, you would be on the right side now. But you graduated from Bradshaw Mountain. You played against the Prescott Badgers several times, but now you step into the shoes as coach, not only for the badminton team, you're also the assistant varsity head softball coach, the head varsity basketball coach for the girls program. So I got to ask, was it a little weird being associated with the Badgers for being a Bear for so long?
Yeah, it definitely, it's, if you would have asked me when I was playing in high school for Bradshaw that I ever would have wanted to coach, like that wasn't anything I ever saw for myself or
right.
searched out, but I graduated from college and came back up and put my name in at the Armory to get on a softball team, and that's kind of where I met Missy Townsend and Julie Crockett and a few of the others that kind of brought me in 14 years ago to the basketball program. And a week in and I was hooked. I can't imagine not coaching now. I love the sports. I love these kids. And it's a chance for me to kind of give back, because I had a lot of coaches throughout my career that, helped me along the way, not with just sports, but everything, So I feel like it's definitely important. So.
Yeah, of course. And we've seen, and you run a phenomenal program with the badminton team. The basketball team is getting ready for their season coming up, and then we'll have softball in the spring. So a lot of exciting things going on around Prescott High School. Coach, I got one last question for you. As we mentioned, you are also the head basketball coach for the girls program at Prescott High School. You won a region championship as a Bear. Hopefully this year you'll be able to capture a region championship as a Badger. But Coach, how's the basketball team looking before we head into the fall season?
We should, the last few years, I felt like we've underperformed just a little bit. There's the last 2 or 3 years, there's probably at least half a dozen games that were just super close games that could have gone either way, but unfortunately didn't go our way. And it turns a winning season into a losing season, by a couple games. And I feel like we're always just right there. We have a lot of potential, and usually every year, there's 1 or 2 kind of all-stars on the team, and then you kind of build around that. So we're doing the best we can with the kids that we have, and I'm always optimistic going into it because I feel like we got a great group of kids that want to work hard, that want to put the time in. And it's just a matter of kind of getting over that hump and pulling out those close games, So.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and Coach, again, I want to thank the Prescott High School head varsity badminton and head varsity girls basketball coach, Coach Bobbi Yoder. Coach, best of luck going forward in the badminton season. We'll have to bring you on to talk some basketball here soon and see what the Badgers can do for the rest of the badminton season and also for basketball. Thank you very much.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach, and safe travels back from Tennessee. Coach Bobbi Yoder, thank you very much for coming on. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be getting a chance to sit down with Bradshaw Mountain High School head football coach Bob Young on the other side of this break. You don't want to miss that one. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting, Jackson Hewitt, and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by an absolute legend here in the 4A Grand Canyon region. He is currently the head coach of the varsity boys football team at Bradshaw Mountain High School. Coach Bob Young. Coach, welcome on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We're happy to have you. Obviously, you made your staple, and your reputation is very, very well known around here in the Cottonwood area, in Yavapai County, in the 4A Grand Canyon region, of course. 24 years coaching at Mingus Union High School as a football coach and a baseball coach. 178 wins, 1 tie on the record, 98 losses, 2 state runner-up finishes, a state championship in '97, and of course a baseball title in 2009. So a very prominent record for you, Coach. Like I said, you're a name that everybody knows around here. Even when I first got the job, we were talking about you, and you weren't even at the school. But we're happy to have you on the show. And, you know, you were the longtime Mingus coach there for 24 years. How did that time at Mingus Union build you as a coach to what we've seen now, the absolute legend that we see now?
I don't know about the legend part, but, you know, when I first got up to Mingus, you know, being from Phoenix, I thought I was going to be there a year or two and get back down to Phoenix and, get into one of the Mesa districts or something and go from there. And I got up to Mingus and, you know, was an assistant for Bill Rudolph for 5 or 6 years. And, you know, that's where I really learned how to become a coach. You know, I thought I was just a little hot shot, you know, back when I started and knew it all. And I didn't know really anything about how to handle kids. And, you know, the Bill Rudolphs and the Bob Alexanders, those are the guys that, you know, taught me the ropes and, you know, taught me, you know, what it was really all about, not about wins and losses, but, you know, molding young men and young women. And, you know, that's what we tried to do over the, you know, 25 plus years at Mingus. And, you know, you talked about the wins and the championships and, you know, what the kids did after high school means a lot more to me now than any of those wins that we had.
Of course. You know, what has been your philosophy as a coach kind of since the day you started to where you are now?
Try to outwork people. I mean, not just the players, but myself personally. I always thought that, you know, that was the secret to success. And, you know, you try to teach kids that, you know, you work hard and good things are going to happen. And, you know, our secret sauce all those years at Mingus was just the work that we put in the weight room year round. I mean, and that was our tradition. And I think that was our legacy going up against all the teams, is that, you know, they knew we might not be the biggest, but we were going to be strong and we're going to be prepared and, you know, we're going to fight to the end.
Now, Coach, obviously we mentioned your long tenure over at Mingus Union High School, but you did make a couple pit stops along the way after Mingus. You had a quick stop at Notre Dame. You were over at Sedona High School more recently. You were tasked to be the defensive coordinator at Camp Verde High School for the Cowboys, but decided to take the job at Bradshaw Mountain High School. Of course, the tragic passing of Coach Chuck Moeller at the beginning of this year opens up the position for you, and you were accepted as that role, more than enough on the resume to take that job. But kind of what was the decision for you to take another head coaching job inside of the 4A Grand Canyon region?
Well, you know, actually when I took the job at Sedona last year, you know, that was my hope, is that I was going to be able to build that program up and, you know, be there until I retired. And you know, we just didn't have the numbers, and it didn't work for whatever reason. And, you know, at that point in time, you know, it was, you know, midway through spring and pretty much all, you know, and we live in Northern Arizona, and I knew that, you know, I was going to be up here. And, you know, when Bradshaw opened up, you know, that was always something in the back of my mind. I do want to be head coach one more time. And, you know, it was, you know, going to be somewhere in Northern Arizona. And it was, you know, just unfortunately for, you know, Coach Moeller, but, you know, the timing just seemed to work out, you know, in my favor. And, you know, things work in mysterious ways.
Yes, they very much do. And a very mysterious thing now is that you'll be coaching against the Marauders, I believe, for the first time in your career. And as I mentioned, you do take over for Coach Moeller. I just thought we'd take the time to talk about, you know, you coached against him for several years when he took over at Bradshaw and you still at Mingus, and now you're tasked with filling his shoes, essentially. Just so we can talk a little bit about coaching against Coach Muller and also what it means now to take over that program for him.
Right. Well, he was well respected. He coached in college. He coached at Stanford. I mean, he coached under some legendary college and NFL coaches. So he had the pedigree. And the thing that I didn't know a lot going up against him was he was so well liked by the kids, and he really cared for the kids. And the short amount of time he was at Bradshaw, that's what I'm finding out now. And and basically I inherited his coaching staff, and they're well coached. They know football, and so I know just a few times that I went up against him, I knew that Bradshaw was going to be well coached, and that's something that's going to carry over, and I'm just going to add my touch and flavor to the program now, and hopefully we'll take the program to another level.
And again, we were speaking with Coach Bob Young, the head varsity football coach at Bradshaw Mountain High School. Coach, how has the reception been at Bradshaw since you took over?
Well, so far so good. I mean, with the pandemic going on, it's hard. We still haven't had any kids on campus. So, I got there in July, and, certainly we've been able to see the football kids every day. But this first quarter, it was all Google Classroom, and so after fall break here, we're finally going to get some kids on campus. But I've been around football team and the coaches and the administration, and that's been about it right now.
Were you able to keep anybody from your legendary staff over at Mingus to bring over there to Bradshaw?
Yeah, actually, Neil Dixon, he comes over. He was my defensive coordinator, for all those years, and he owns Reese's Tires, so he's able to get off in the afternoons, and he's been a big asset coming over, and because we did change the defense, we didn't change the offense. It was so late in the year to do anything, but defensively we made some changes, and he's come over and, like I said, help mold some of these defensive guys.
Now, how did that feel on your first day back, Coach? Obviously, the COVID-19 restrictions kind of keeping the off season quite limited, and it must have been tough for you as a new coach coming into a new program, a new school in general. How was that first week of practice for you, and what were you really pushing for your players when there was possibly no season going on, but able to keep them sharp? What did you push during the off season for them?
Well, that first month we couldn't get in the weight room. And it was like groups of 10 kind of stuff. And so, I just tried to emphasize with them that eventually we were going to have a season, and, the things we were doing, we would carry over. We did a lot of speed stuff, a lot of agility stuff, a lot of conditioning, and then, that second month when we were finally able to get to the weight room, we've been working hard in there ever since.
Again, we were speaking with head varsity football coach Bob Young of Bradshaw Mountain High School. Coach, we mentioned it earlier that you used to coach in Mingus. And now, after coaching so many years against Bradshaw, how does it feel now? On the 23rd, you'll get an opportunity to coach against your old team. Matt Showalter's been calling it the Rave in the Cave. We're all excited for your return to the Cave for the first time in your career, but it's got to be a little strange when you put on that T-shirt and says BMHS instead of the usual MUHS. But how's it going to feel to step into the Cave next week?
Well, it'll be different, no doubt. I mean, we're around the place, but it'll be on the other sideline. And for us, it's just about taking care of business. We just have to continue to get better, and I think the kids will certainly do that. And I know there's never been a lot of love lost. It's a great rivalry, and we when I was at Mingus, we fought tooth and nail to beat those guys, and they did the same. And that's not going to change. That part of it's not going to change. So, I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited to see, Mingus restore their program to a high level, and I think they will. And, we're certainly planning on Bradshaw being at a high level. So, it should be a great rivalry for years to come.
Yeah, very much so. And now that we have the connection between the two schools with you, Coach Young, it kind of adds a little bit more drama to the entire game. But we're looking forward to it, and it should be a good one. The seniors that you'll be playing against were actually the freshmen when you had your final season at Mingus in 2018. It's got to be a little weird, right, to play against some of those younger kids now?
Yeah, and I'm proud of those guys for sticking it out, because I do remember, getting those guys in the weight room, the Zach Figgies and the Jonathan, Sanchez and Andrew Meyer and all, all those guys that, I remember, a lot of those guys, they started coming when they were in 7th grade to the weight room in the summers. And, it's neat to see them progress. And, of course, Zach Harrison, he used to always go to our football camps, and, you could tell he's going to be pretty dang good, back in the day. And so, I just wish them the best of luck. I hope they lose to us, but every other game that they play, I have a lot of respect for the guys that, especially after the tough year last year, that, stuck it out and worked through it. And, hopefully they'll have a great senior year.
Yeah, and we're definitely looking forward to it as well on our end. Coach Provenzano stepping in where Coach Ortiz left off, who stepped in for you when you decided to leave the school. A lot of changes at Mingus. They're looking like a completely different team, and I think we should be in for quite a revamp or even a re-energize into the rivalry between Mingus and Bradshaw, because that didn't go the way of Mingus last time, but of course, new year, new team. We'll see what happens. Speaking of your new team, Coach, what can we expect from the Bears in the 4A Grand Canyon region? They're usually sitting right at the top, usually a top 3 team in the region, but how are they looking this year under what Matt Showalter likes to refer to as the Bradshaw Bob years?
Well, hopefully before it's over with, we're gonna do really well, but we're going to get better every week. They're still learning. Like I said, we got a brand new defense, and, they're trying to get adjusted to the kind of things that I like to do. And, we really are young. We've only got 10 seniors, and the bulk of this class, a bunch of the juniors started last year as sophomores. They're now juniors, but they're still juniors, and we've got a number of sophomores playing. So, I really feel, with the year off season, I think next year we could really make some noise. So, this year we're just trying to get better every week, and we're gonna go out and duke it out with everybody. I mean, we didn't get in the weight room for 4 months, but neither did anybody else. So that's not going to show. But we're gonna play hard. We're gonna get after it on defense, and unlike years past, we air it out. I've not been known for an air it out kind of guy, but the offense that they've been running, and we've got some really good quarterbacks that can throw. So we've they'll be a little different. People won't know recognize that for me, but that's a little different.
Well, when you got them, you might as well use them. You got a strong arm, utilize them as best you can. We've got one too in Zach Harrison on the side of the Marauders, but should be an absolute shootout on October 23rd in Cottonwood, Arizona, as the Marauders take on the Bears. When we get to that game, should be a lot of fun. Coach, you mentioned the youth of your team. That's got to be kind of a positive for you coming in as a new coach to get an opportunity to sort of help to build those steps. The seniors are going to graduate. They were the last bit of Coach Muller's seniors, and they're still, obviously, even the sophomores and the freshmen were still a part of Coach Muller's team the year before. But it's got to be nice coming in for you to get a few of the younger guys to start implementing some of those things that you really want to push for this team.
And this reminds me a lot of, when I took over for Coach Rudolph back in, 95, it took 3 years. And we'd, Coach Rudolph had done such great things, but, it takes 2-3 years to get a cycle through to, for the kids to understand. And, that third year is when we won a state championship. And so I see a lot of similarities here. Like I said, I think next year if we do what we're supposed to in the off season, we're going to be really good. And then, hopefully it'll take off. And, once the guys understand the expectations and what they need to do to compete at a high level, and we can get there.
Well, Coach Young, it sounds like we could be seeing a state championship make its way to Prescott Valley at some point then, huh?
Well, you know what? I think the last Northern Arizona team to win it was that 1997 Mingus team. That's a heck of a long time. Somebody in Northern Arizona needs to win one, so might as well be us.
Might as well be the guy who did it last time, 97 state champs, the Mingus Marauders, under this man right here, Coach Bobbi Young, who is currently the head varsity football coach at Bradshaw Mountain High School. Coach, I want to thank you very much for coming on and speaking with me, and I look forward to seeing what happens when we get to that October 23rd matchup.
Yep, we'll be looking forward to it as well.
Coach Bob Young and the Bradshaw Mountain Bears, a strong showing so far this season. We'll see what they do for the rest of the year, and we're excited for that Marauder and Bear matchup. Coach, again, want to thank you very much for coming on. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have more sports. Don't go anywhere, right here on Off the Bench. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Want to welcome you back here to Off the Bench Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm your host, Philip Catalfamo. Want to welcome you back here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. What a great show. Want to thank my guests, Coach Klint McKean of the wrestling program over at Mingus Union High School. Always great to talk with Coach McKean. Hopefully we'll get an opportunity to go out there and call a couple varsity wrestling matches as we did last year. And of course, Coach Bobbi Yoder doing a phenomenal job with the badminton program over at Prescott High School, especially considering she didn't have any clue about the sport before she took over. So kudos to her and her intelligence as a person and as a coach to make the transition nice and smooth and keep the team very, very competitive in the Division II Northwest. And finally, we get Coach Young, what can you say? He's an absolute legend in the area. We're all looking forward to the Rave in the Cave coming up on October 23rd, and it should be a lot of fun. Speaking of the week coming forward, I do want to remind our Mingus Marauder fans that you can go vote at myradioplace.com/Mingus for our all-decade team. If you're a Marauder fan, feel free to go visit myradioplace.com/Mingus. We are voting on quarterback and offensive line this week, and we'll announce the starters during the next football broadcast. Speaking of next week, we've got a lot of great matchups coming up on October 20th. A lot of volleyball matchups. It's like the week of volleyball. There's so many games going on. We've got Bradshaw taking on Flagstaff. Again, a lot of implications for first place in that game. Prescott taking on Mingus on October 20th. There's a couple of the key matchups that are going on. On October 22nd, Bradshaw will travel all the way to Kingman to take on Lee Williams. That should be a great game. And for football, of course, on Friday, we will have football again. Mojave taking on Coconino. Lee Williams traveling to their first Freedom game and their only Freedom game on the season, going down to Shadow Mountain, and Prescott and Flagstaff battling it out. Always a good rivalry between the Badgers and the Eagles. And of course, I mentioned it when we talked with Coach Young. I mentioned it at the top of the show. The Rave in the Cave, Bradshaw Mountain taking on the Mingus Marauders. Should be a lot of fun. You're not going to want to miss that one. And you can watch those games on Verde Valley TV and KYBC. So with that, I want to thank all my guests for coming on to this week's show. It was a great show. I look forward to next week, and I look forward to you joining me right here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. And with that, I want to thank our sponsors one more time, Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm your host, Philip Catalfamo. More sports next week right here on Off the Bench. Have a great rest of your week.